So I'm at this park that's like 10 minutes from our office that I discovered recently, where I walked around this soccer field and rehearsed a speech before I had to go to Belmont Abbey and give it that day. And I was thinking, here's this nice park with all these soccer fields that apparently no one uses during the day. This might be a good place to record update videos sometimes, because it's just more fun to do these outside than it is in the office. And so it has been a few months since I recorded an update video, and I wanted to tell you about some of the things that have been going on. I also want to give you an update on the sidewalk counseling course that we've been creating. And so I'm going to walk around the soccer field for a while and tell you what we've been doing. There's like one side of this football field where the sun would be right behind me, so I might every once in a while cut and skip forward to the next corner as I basically loop this beautiful empty soccer field. It's been really busy. We've been doing, we've done some speaking this fall, and we've also been booking a lot of talks for next year. I think we've got something like a dozen speeches lined up. Now, some of those are local events. I'm doing a series, like a Sunday school series at my church early next year, but then I'll be speaking at the Students for Life conference in DC. I'm speaking in Arizona at a maternity home, kind of a fundraising banquet here in, I think, a week or two or something like that. And yeah, we just got some other talks lined up. We'll do, for those of you that get our newsletter, we'll have some stories from some of our recent events in that newsletter. For example, I was at University of Miami recently in Ohio, and that was just a really cool event, really well attended. I got to meet this awesome philosophy professor, so I know I'll be telling that story in our newsletter, and some other really cool things happened there. And then I went straight from there to Berkeley, where a pro-life conference happened with just a lot of my favorite people were there. And so that was really cool to share some of our training with that audience. Meanwhile, right around that same time, basically all of our staff got to go to Michigan and do outreach there, and Tim gave a speech at University of Michigan, and I know that went really well as well. So there's been some speaking going on. We've been keeping up our blog post schedule, and then I also recently, in case you haven't seen it, I recently made a video series responding to the pro-choice documentary Reversing Roe. This is a Netflix documentary that came out, and this really cool volunteer who's been helping us a lot with the sidewalk counseling course had said, hey, someone at ERI ought to watch Reversing Roe, and maybe you guys could write an article or something about it. And so I watched it, and it was really frustrating to watch this documentary, because there was a lot of like deceptive stuff going on in it, but and there's like bad pro-choice arguments in it, but it's also, it was biased, and it was biased in some subtle ways. There were these editing tricks that were being used that it really annoyed me, because it was like it was more subtle than just only interviewing pro-choice people. Like, they didn't do that. They showed a lot of pro-life people, but they would use all these editing tricks to try to kind of subconsciously make you feel uncomfortable with pro-life people. And I recognized a lot of these tricks because I study video editing, because I'm fun that way. But I wasn't sure if everyone else would. And so I thought I could try to make a video that kind of exposes some of these tricks, just in case maybe a lot of pro-life people weren't seeing what I was seeing. And this ultimately did get validated. The main reactions that I've gotten to the video series have been from people who were not as much, commenting specifically about like the pro-life arguments that I made, because it's kind of two really main sections. I'm talking about editing tricks, but then I'm also responding to the pro-choice arguments, and so it's kind of more of an apologetics part of it. And I got a lot more response to the first part where I'm showing the editing tricks. So I was a little bit self-conscious about making it, because it's like, what if this is really obvious? What if like all these things that I'm seeing, these little video editing tricks, is really obvious to everybody? And they're just like, duh, yeah. And luckily, it looks like that wasn't the case. And a lot of people specifically, like it kind of made them feel like they were suddenly able to see these things once it was pointed out to them. And so certainly a lot of people found that to be helpful. But I decided to use a format that I've never used before, but it's a format that I've found that I've really enjoyed watching. It's this thing, and I know I'm not the only one who watches these, because these videos, I've been seeing them on YouTube, and I'm going to turn around. And they get a lot of views. And so it's not just me, but I also think that I'm seeing a lot of them now because, Google's algorithm has figured out Josh Brahm loves these kinds of videos. And so, like, whenever I go to YouTube, like on the front, my front page is plastered with videos like this. But it's this format where, like, an expert, so like a doctor or a lawyer, will, be sitting in a room, and they'll have a monitor, and they'll be watching clips from like a show or a movie that relates to their profession. And then they just give commentary on it. So a doctor watches an episode of House or Scrubs or something like that, and, talks about what's accurate, what's not accurate, that kind of thing. And I really enjoy those. I feel like I learn a lot, and it's interesting. It's kind of a fun way to learn. And I hadn't seen any pro-life people use that format before. And so just kind of the helpful timing of, I'd been watching a lot of videos like that right around the time that I watched Reversing Roe, maybe I can try to, basically use that format. So the format's not original at all. It's totally ripped off from what a lot of other cool people are doing on YouTube, but it's something that pro-life people hadn't used before, I don't think. I thought the most helpful format for exposing these video editing tricks, it needs to be a video. You can't just, listen to a podcast as I try to describe these things. It's really more helpful for me to show you a clip from the documentary and then tell you what I've seen. And so I think the format worked really well. So all that to say, it's done. I made it. I spent a couple of weeks working on it with a really cool local volunteer that let me film it at his house, and he helped with some of the animations that we included in the video. And there's a good kind of a first attempt at a new format, the kind of thing that I partially did it because I thought this might be something that we might want to do more of. I could certainly see this working well with other, at least documentaries. I don't know about using it with like more like fictional movies. I know some people have suggested some other movies like Gosnell, and I don't know if the format would work so well with something like that, but I'm open. I would mainly probably want to do these more when we have someone on staff, at least part-time, helping with the video editing. It wasn't like a really hard video to make. It gave me a chance to learn some new things, but it's pretty time intensive to make a video like that. And so it's not the kind of thing that I could just, put out one of those like every week or something like that. It's more intensive than that, but I think it came out really well. I'm pretty proud of it. And it was really nice at a personal level to spend the bulk of a few weeks of time working on something that creative. There was, kind of a project idea that I had because Tim and Rachel were working on a lot of other things at the time. It wasn't a real collaborative effort. It was just kind of something I was doing with that volunteer. And it was nice to focus some of this time on something creative and have it come out, I think, really well. I'm really proud of it. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go to equalrightsinstitute.com/reversing-roe, and you can watch that and let me know what you think. And the last thing, let me talk to you a bit about the sidewalk counseling module that we've been making and we've been talking about for a long time now. We've had a delay, but it's a delay for the best possible reason. But I know a lot of people have been looking forward to that, and so I just want to kind of give you a quick update on what's going on with that. We got a chance to film 13 lessons for this thing. It was awesome. We spent basically 4 days filming at the church that I used to go to. They were super generous. It's One Life Church in Concord. They were really generous. Just let us use their auditorium, and these two awesome volunteers. Tony Johnson and his brother came all the way down from Iowa to help us to film. It was a really, really wonderful effort, and we've put out some pictures from that shoot, and we did a little Facebook Live video and stuff like that. So we made a lot of progress in, going from kind of the pre-production phase to production. We've worked really hard on putting together the content. Jacob has worked a lot with Tim and Rachel over the last year or so on what is it we're going to talk about, what is it we're not going to talk about, what are the kinds of tips that we want to give, how do we, kind of put together all of the content so that it's not just, hours and hours and hours of just kind of stream of consciousness. Like, you don't want to do that. You want it to be put together and organized in a really helpful way. And that's something that Tim and Rachel excel at, and not as much Jacob. So there's been a lot of work, and especially on their part, of listening to Jacob tell lots of stories from his sidewalk counseling, and then them kind of organizing all of that content into, basically a huge outline that makes sense and will be helpful to people. Meanwhile, I spent a lot of time working on putting together our new video studio that we're moving into early next year, of researching and purchasing equipment for that we'd already raised the funds for, and making sure that we had everything we needed in time for our first shoot. And so, ton of progress, everything going awesome. And then this very unexpected thing happened. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this yet. So I'm going to talk a little bit vaguely, partly for time and partly because I don't think we as a team have decided all of what we want to say publicly about this. But I'll say we came to be aware of some sidewalk counseling techniques that Jacob had never tried, that some other sidewalk counselors in the country have been finding to be effective for them. And it seemed like and some of that was based on some psychological research that had come out on like sales techniques and things like that some sidewalk counselors have been using to, according to them, really increase their numbers. And so that put us kind of at a fork in the road of what do we do? Like, we found all this out after having recorded 13 of the lessons of this sidewalk counseling module. We hadn't recorded the lesson that all of that data is relevant to. We hadn't recorded basically the lesson on what do you actually say once you're in the conversation with the abortion-minded client, or maybe her boyfriend or something like that. But we'd recorded a bunch of the other content. We're, full on in production mode. Like, everything is, the machine is working, full speed, basically. Like, there's momentum. It was great. And then suddenly we hear that there are these techniques that some people are finding to work well and Jacob hadn't tried before. And so then it becomes, what do we do with that? Do we just move forward and maybe assess those techniques later? Maybe we add them to, this thing later, or do we stop now and kind of assess? And that was a really hard decision. Again, because we had all this momentum. But I felt pretty strongly that, we purposely created, but I felt pretty strongly that, we shouldn't necessarily stop, all, post-production of what we'd already recorded, but we should take a break of recording new things so that Jacob could assess these techniques, really try them out. And the reason for that is because I feel like it really connects to our core values as an organization. I've said this before. When we started ERI, we wanted, Tim and I had long conversations about what we wanted to be able to do with this organization. And one of the very early things we were talking about was being innovative and flexible. Being an innovative and flexible apologetics organization, meaning that if we, would go onto a college campus, or, on a series of college campuses, basically trying different things. I've talked a lot about, that's our lab. We're doing R&D when we're on a college campus. We're trying different things. And if we can basically beat our own material, if we find a new argument or something like that works better than stuff that we've taught before, then we want to be able to change that, not feel kind of married to what we've taught before. We want to be able to tell the people that are following us, hey, great news, we found something else that's working really, really well, and here's what that is, and here's how to use it. We also have a core value about being open-minded, about being open to the idea that, we don't know everything. And there are always new things to learn. We always want to be in learning mode. And so it seemed like we can't ignore these new techniques that we've heard about. We have to at least try them. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to teach all of them. it doesn't mean that we're going to end up believing that these techniques are actually better than what Jacob was already planning on teaching. That's to be determined. But Jacob, I kind of halted almost everything else that Jacob was working on and told him I want him to go to a bunch of different abortion facilities and try this stuff and really give them great tries. Like, don't just try these techniques the way that we've heard other people using them. Like, take Jacob's awesome out-of-the-box creative brain and get him trying to come up with the best versions of these techniques and really give them fair tries. Like, it wouldn't be a fair try if you just went and tried it once or twice at one facility and then say, oh, it's not working as well as my stuff did. Like, really give this stuff a fair shake. Like, actually go and see. And he spent time with a sidewalk counselor who's reported that she's seen, an increase in her saves from, incorporating some of the psychological research. And so really taking our time to check out these techniques. And then we'll, as a group, kind of talk about what Jacob observed and talk about whether or not we're going to change what we were going to record or not. And we're not going to let this completely halt everything. We're not going to have Jacob spend another 6 months evaluating these techniques. But it's probably going to end up delaying us a couple of months. I think right now, I don't even know if I should be making a guess on when we publish the module, but I think March is the earliest that it comes out, at a feasible level. And while Jacob's working on the content, we're working again with this awesome volunteer on trying to figure out how to do a better job launching this thing. Like, how do we get more people to watch it? And so, because it's like we're doing a really good job of putting together awesome content that can be really, really helpful. But there's still a lot of pro-life people that still aren't aware of us. We're still kind of young and small, at least compared to a lot of national organizations that have just been around for a lot longer than we have. And so while Jacob is working on that content, Tim and Rachel and I and some of our volunteers are actively trying to figure out, how can we do a better job launching this sidewalk counseling module than we did the original Equip for Life course. We created a really, really awesome course, but I'm not a natural marketing person. And so if we had a marketing person on staff, we would have done it differently. And I think it would have done better. More people would have gotten it. And it's not like it's over, it's a evergreen course. This content is still really, really helpful. And as our platform grows, as ERI grows, more and more people will become aware of that course. And I think we'll get it. But at the same time, there's something special about launching a course, and we're looking at ways that we can kind of improve the way that we market this sidewalk counseling module and try to get people who are interested in doing sidewalk counseling well to know about this course where Jacob is talking about the things that he has found to be the most effective, to save the most lives. And some of his techniques are pretty different than what a lot of the other sidewalk counseling people teach. So I'm really excited for that to come out, but that is why I did not expect that creating, basically an online course of sidewalk counseling to take as long as it has. But in the end, I'm really proud of the decisions that we've made. There's this weird dichotomy where it's kind of you ever feel really excited and scared at the same time, and it feels weird to be able to feel those two things at the same time. There's something like that here, where the decision to kind of tap the brakes and put Jacob back into testing mode, at least for a while, before we make final decisions on the content that we're going to film. Certainly that has been a frustrating thing for our staff that has been working on this for a long time and doing really, really good work on this for a long time that still is still hidden. Most people haven't seen the fruits of all that labor yet. And at the same, so I get that. That's definitely there. Pray for our staff. This is kind of a frustrating time. But at the same time, I've never been more proud of us. Like this is the best and hardest test that we have ever had when it comes to, again, those core values. Are we actually going to be innovative and flexible? Are we actually open-minded? That even though Jacob is as awesome as he is, maybe is there some new technique that someone else has come up with that is better than some of the things that he has done? And that was hard. Tests are hard. But I think we're passing it with flying colors. Like, I'm so proud of us. Like, this is exactly what we got to be doing. And yeah, all right, it means it'll, be a few more months before this thing is done and before we can finally, stop thinking about it, stop thinking about making this course that we've been working on, at least with part of our time for about a year. I think we're making the right calls. So there you go. There is an update on some of the things that have been going on. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for caring about us. Oh, I should say we made our goal. We had a fundraising campaign, a matching grant campaign that I had even lost hope that we were going to completely match, everything that a few generous donors had offered. And then in the last hours, literally the last hours of the last day of the campaign, we made it to 100%. We made it to that goal. So thank you. If you were one of the people who helped contribute to that, thank you very much. I was amazed. It was really awesome to see that thermometer thing, basically get to 100% right at the end there. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your prayers. There's really, really cool things going on here. And hopefully this little video gave you a sense of what some of those things are.